Hello and welcome to Matt's Reloading Bench. Today, in front of me, I've got a coworker's Remington Model 7600. And it is a pump action 270. And it's his primary deer rifle. And he was wondering if I could take it apart and clean it and get it working back in tip-top shape and touch up any blemishes that may be on it. So we'll see what I can do. So I've got the rifle here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the sling. The next step is I'm going to remove the forearm. And to do that, there's a very large flathead screw on the very end of it. All right, so there's the forearm. Now the next thing that I have to do is, you see these holes that are in this pump slide at the bottom? I'm going to have to take and rotate this out, and then I'll be able to remove this whole upper assembly, including the barrel, the lower tube, and this locking block. All right, it took a little bit of finesse, but I was able to break that loose. And now I've just got to thread it all the way out. All right, now that whole assembly comes out as one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start degreasing everything. I want to pay specific attention to the bolt assembly itself and make sure that I get as much as the grime and gunk out of there as I can. As you can see, this thing has field debris in it. There's a lot of dirt and grit on it, and I just want to get that out and get this thing cleaned up and oiled and put back together. All right, so this is about as far as I'm going to get it taken down. I removed the trigger group assembly, and this is as far as I'm going to disassemble the bolt assembly. One of the main reasons why is, to be honest, I can't quite figure out how to get the actual bolt off of this carriage unit. But that's fine. I can get it really clean with it still on there like that. At least I've got full exposure to all the moving parts, and I can flush out whatever's on the inside with how it is. To get this started, I'm going to go ahead and just spray it down with Hornady one-shot gun cleaner and lube. It'll help flush some of the debris and start getting it loosened up. And then I'm going to hit it with some brake clean after that. I'm just going to flush it really good. I want to get out as much of the oil and old grease and buildup of crap that I can. And this is actually moving better already. I'm going to just kind of spin it in the housing a little bit. All right, that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean that out a little bit more with some Q-tips. We'll see if there's anything left in these grooves. And sure enough, there's plenty of dirt in there. So these tracks that you're seeing, there's detents that go in there. And it goes in this hole like so. There's one on each side. And it just lines up, and that way when the bolt is going forward and back, it rotates it to where it needs to be in whichever position it is in. So those just fall right out. We're just going to get that nice and clean in there. That's not too bad. So one more thing that I'm going to clean on this bolt assembly is this front pump housing. So the pump tube goes into it, and there's a rubber gasket on here, and this whole thing is really super greasy and there's a lot of debris on it. So I would imagine the inside of this is 100% the same. So I'm going to get a large cleaning swab and I'm going to clean inside that tube. And as you can see, there's plenty of grime in there. So I'm just going to kind of swirl it around as best as I can. So now I'm just going to get everything on the outside of the assembly cleaned. I'm going to kind of scrub out all the little nooks and crannies. All right, now that I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and clean this pump tube both inside and out just the same. For being as old as the rifle is, this pump gasket is actually in really good shape yet, so I'm going to actually leave that in there. And we'll clean out the inside of the tube. So the next step is I'm going to clean out the inside of the upper part of the action here. To do that, again, I'm going to go ahead and spray some gun cleaner in here. There's quite a bit of debris. Taking one of my large cleaning swabs and I'm just going to scrub it out. That's not terrible, but I'm going to go ahead and do that a second time. And again, rub down all the surfaces in there. Get out as much of the debris as I can. And now the next part is this little insert. It actually comes from this inset where you can see the 4 scope screws. So I'm going to go ahead and get this scrubbed off and cleaned up really nice before I put that back in. Now you see where it's got the rounded end here and the flared open end here. The flared open end goes to the front of the receiver. So it just goes right back in this groove. And there you go. So now the inside of the receiver is clean. It feels smooth, it's nice and oiled, and I'm going to leave it as it is. So now I can go ahead and put the trigger group back in. So before I do that, let me just explain what I did to clean the trigger group. I just took and sprayed the outside surfaces with my Hornady one-shot, and I scrubbed it with a toothbrush and sprayed it down again. And then I hit it with the brake clean to get out any oil or grease residue. Then I went ahead and put some action grease on any of the friction moving parts. So I've got a little bit on here and some on there. And then I've got some here where that travels up and down. So now all I got to do is put this back in and reset my 2 retainer pins. Now as you can see, one is fatter and one is thinner. Obviously the fatter one goes in the back and the thinner one goes in the front. And if you can't quite get it started, I use the rubber end on my mallet. And it taps in there real nice. Now, I'm going to make sure the safety's on. And the next thing I'm going to do now is actually clean the barrel. As you can see, it is dirty. Very dirty. Ooh, there's some rust in by the shoulder. And there's rust inside the barrel. We're going to get this nice and cleaned up. It's ugly. All right, so I've got the barrel set up in the vise, and I'm going to go ahead and just do an overnight deep soak on it using my patch out wipeout with the accelerator. So I'm going to go ahead and just completely saturate that barrel as much as I can, and we'll come back at it tomorrow. It is the next morning, and I am going to go ahead and take this patch out and saturate my brush again with more accelerator. I'm going to scrub it real quick before I push everything out with dry patches. The reason I'm doing this is because it's had overnight to set and hopefully soften some stuff up. So rubbing the brush through again gives it an opportunity to really scrape some crap out before I just go ahead and push out with dry patches. Run a patch through with the jig. And it is black as coal. So I'm going to go ahead and run another one through. And it's still nice and dirty. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to run some bore paste through. Whatever carbon is really stuck on there, that'll get it out. So for the bore paste, I put a good amount on. I'll put some on the middle, some on the front. And that should be enough to spread throughout the entirety of the length of the bore. I'm just going to run that back and forth a whole bunch of times. And then I'll start going back and forth, short strokes, and gradually work my way down the length of the bore. Now the bore paste you don't have to let sit, because if it's not moving, it's not doing anything. So I can go ahead and run a dry patch through. And I'll run a few dry patches through because I want to make sure I get it all out. So I ran the ISO bore paste through and did a few dry patches. There's still carbon just after the throat. Then it starts to clean up pretty nice for a good distance of the barrel. And it's pretty dang clean. I'm probably going to run some more patch out and accelerator in it. Get the rest of this carbon out. I went and scrubbed out the chamber a little bit to see if I could start to get this rust broken up. And there's a little bit of rust staining left, but not a lot of built up stuff remaining. I'm probably going to take a little bit of the bore paste and scrub that chamber out to see if I can get more of it. The bore itself is looking pretty darn good. I see little bits of pitting here and there, but it's not the worst. It's looking pretty darn good. I'm going to run bore paste through it one more time just to get the little bits of carbon that are being a little stubborn out. Like that right there. I'm going to get it as close to new as I can, and we'll see how it turns out. Now, unfortunately, towards the end of the barrel, right before the muzzle, there's some pretty bad pitting going on here. There's nothing I can really do about that. So again, with the bore paste, I'm going to put some on the front, some in the middle, and I'll go ahead and work this in. So one thing that I'm going to do is I really want to get into the chamber and clean that out well. So to do that, I'm going to set up my drill, and I'm going to use a chamber brush for an AR, and I'm going to put the bore paste on that, and we're going to scrub this out and get it looking good. I am going to put bore paste, as you can see, on the main brush, but I'm also going to put it in the lug area too, because this whole area in here is pretty caked up with a lot of dirt and debris. And now I'm going to go through and clean it with a patch. And as you can see, there's still some dirt and grime there. Now we can go ahead and check it out with the bore scope again. Well, the chamber, especially where the shoulder of the case is, looks a lot better. I'm happy with that. There's still some rust staining there, but the major buildup of rust is definitely gone. Let's see what the rest of the barrel looks like. That's not too bad. I don't expect absolute perfection because of the simple fact of I don't know how long this has sat and how long it's had since its last thorough cleaning. I could keep going, but overall, it's pretty friggin' clean. I'm going to say that's pretty good. Now I'm going to look at reassembling the rifle. With the bolt, if you look here and here, that's where these retention pins go in. Now, one is large in diameter, one is small in diameter. And the grooves that they travel in, one is large, one is small. So it's really hard to mess this up, okay? So I will go ahead and put some gun grease on them. Two reasons. Number one, lubrication. And number two, it'll help keep them in place. So I'm only just putting in a little bit of grease. And then I'm going to drop the detent in on that side. I'll put some grease in this hole. And I'll drop the detent pin in on that side. Just like so. So now, when this travels back and forth, it follows in those channels with that detent pin. And what I'm also going to do is take some gun grease and put it on these locking lugs. Doesn't need a lot, just a little bit goes a long way. So just put a few dabs on, smear it around, get it into place. This will ensure that everything is lubricated properly and you won't have any excess friction. Now I'm keeping the gun grease away from the bolt face itself. I don't want to get any lubrication in that area because if you do, it has a tendency to just collect all of the burnt powder debris, and it'll create a sludge and eventually it'll gum everything up, and I don't want that. I'm going to get my barrel, and this will go in between there, and you just give it a turn and it'll set into the grooves on each side. Okay, so what I like to do is I want to get this into the barrel and I'm going to have it lock in. Okay, the reason that I want this is because it's going to make it easier to get everything back into place. Now this plastic shroud sits just like this over that area. Okay, these plastic shrouds are not made very well. They're very thin plastic that kind of get hard and brittle over time. So when you're putting everything back together, you just got to be careful not to force it. Now, before I actually do put this back together, I want to put a little bit of gun grease here. And on the other side in the same place. Because as you can tell, these are our main friction points from the pump action of this rifle. So if there's a little extra right now, that's fine, because when we pump it a few times, that'll actually work its way out. Just trying to get the grease into all the little nooks and crannies on the underside of that action. So again, I will set the shroud back on there, and we will push this forward, and it goes in just like that. Now, here's the deal. We've got this part that needs to go in to here, all right? So I got a little ahead of myself. We'll remove that back out, and we will set this up. Now, where this gasket is, I'm going to make sure that I get gun grease on there as well. It'll help keep it moisturized and keep it from drying up and cracking up. Because once it cracks, it'll start to disintegrate, and then it'll get to a point where it just becomes a rattle can, because there's nothing to keep everything centered. So this will go in just like so, and we'll put the barrel back into the bracket, and then we will drive that home like so. Get the shroud back on again. We will set that in just like that. Before we start threading this on, I'm going to take my gun grease and I'm going to put some at the beginning of the insert. And I'm also going to disperse some onto the thread of that locking lug. That way, next time that this rifle has to be taken apart to clean, that shouldn't be locked on quite as bad as it was when I tried to take it off this time around. It's a quarter turn at a time. That should be pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that in there, and I'm just going to give it a few taps with my rubber mallet just to make sure that's locked in. The next part is going to be putting the fore-end stock back on. To do that, I'm going to have to move that down so I can get the proper clearance. And that should be good there. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this bolt real quick, and some of the gun grease is going to end up going on there also. And then I'm just going to take my flathead screwdriver and screw that back in. And that should do it. Now that I've got the gun completely reassembled, I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down with some oil. For that, I'm just going to use my Hornady one-shot, and I'm going to wipe down every surface that I can. Now that I've got the gun all cleaned and wiped down, I'm just going to do a quick function test because I want to make sure that I did everything right. So this right here is the pump release. It pumps real nice, super smooth. Trigger pulls. Everything resets very nice. I am really happy with how this rifle turned out. It looks super clean. It runs super good. My next step is taking it to the range and making sure that everything fires and that the scope is zeroed. I've got a few rounds of Federal 150 grain pointed soft point, and I'm gonna shoot a 4-shot group just to make sure that everything is where he needs it. All right, I'm happy with those results. And then run a cleaning patch through here with a little bit of solvent on it, and that'll be the end of it. I'd say this gun is working pretty nice. It cycles, no issues, everything seems well lubricated, and I'm happy with the outcome. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section down below. And make sure to hit that thumbs up so that they know that you like my videos, and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you can get notifications when my next video does come out. And until next time, shoot straight and be safe.